Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In this time, I would like to present my presentations and as well as sharing my understanding about criterion reference test items as a part of the materials of learning assessment subject. All right. So firstly here, we would like to understand about what test item is. According to Brown and Jerry Houston 2002, test items here, it is a unit of measurement with a prompt and a perspective forms for responding, which is intended to yield a response from an examinee from which performance in some language construct may be inferred in order to make some decision. So from this definition, we can highlight words prompt here as an important part of the test item. And then the goal or the objective of giving this such of task is for getting the response from the examinee so that the examiner can measure the performance of the examinee and then make a decision. All right, so here is the part of the item test. As what I said before, that a prompt here, it is as a keyword or the important part of the item test here. Prompt here we can understand as the portions of a test to which the students must respond. Yeah, so this is such as the guidance or the construction. Yeah, the instruction, the clear instruction related to what must be done by the examinee. Okay, and here is the forms of prompt. The first one is item stamps here. As the example, according to the passage, Anna ate a pear, a banana, hamburger, and steak. And what I underline here, according to the passage, Anna ate a, so this is what we understand as the item stamps. Yeah, it's a part of the prompt here. And then the second forms of prompt, it can be a quote or several reading passage. It is usually found in fill in the blank questions or true false, yeah, and there is a several reading passage first as a part of the prompt. And then the third part of or the third forms of the prompt here, it mostly found in different kinds of tests. Yeah, they are selected response, constructed response, and then a personal response. And then next, I'd like to try to explain in detail about this such of tests. Okay, and then the prescriptive forms of responding. As what I said before, that test items, the objective of giving this such of test is to get the response of the examinee. And then here are the three kinds of prescriptive forms of responding. Yeah? The first one, it can be selected response items in which examinee choose the correct response from a set of supplied options. So the answers of the questions are available, in some choice, yeah. And then the examples of these kinds of tests are multiple choice items, binary choice such as true false, and then watching items. And then the second kinds of item test here, it is constructed response items in which examinees choose the correct response from a set of supplied option. Yeah, it's almost the same actually. Yeah, but let we see the difference of these two kinds of tests. Yeah, in detail later on. Okay, and then the examples of constructed response items are short answer items, and then fill in the blank, and then performance tasks. Yeah. And the last one is personal response items, in which students produce different response according to their own personality and preferences. And the examples of these kinds of tests are portfolios, conference, and then self-assessment format. Okay. I'll try to take the detailed explanations about each kinds of test items here. Uh, Firstly, we talk about the selected response item. Overall, the advantages of this kind of test is it requires short times to administer and easy to score, and the scoring is objective. Why? Because the answers of the questions have been available in a choice. It is usually in the forms of if it is multiple choice such as A, B, C, and then D, so that the examiner will be easier to score, and it usually has only one correct answer, a single correct answer. So it require a short time to administer or scoring. And then the advantages of this kind of test is it's relatively difficult to create. Why? Because sometimes the examiner need to be tricky. Need to be tricky in giving the what we call it as destructor for the answer. And so sometimes it is difficult to create selected response item here. And then productions requires no language productions on the part of the students. Well, since this is it doesn't require language productions of the student, so it's suitable to be used to assess the students' receptive skills, such as listening or reading tests. And then for the overall guidelines in making this kind of tests is we need to limit the effect of guessing as much as possible, and then correct answer should be randomly dispersed. Okay, and as the examples of this kind of test, selected response items, the first one is binary choice. The advantages of this kind of choice is useful for assessing ability to discern between two choices, and then simple and direct measure of comprehension. And the disadvantages of this kind of test is tend to be tricky or deceptive, large guessing factor, almost 50%. Why? Because it has only two choice, whether it is true or false, or right or wrong. So it will be easier for the examinee to choose to guess if they don't know exactly about the answer. If it is not true, so it is false. If it is not right, so it is wrong. And then typically focus on detail and facts. And then the guidelines for making this kind of test is we need to avoid long and complex statements, and then avoid including more than one concept in each item, and then avoid absolutes. The second types of selected response item, it is matching. Matching, it can be matching words, matching heading, or anything. And the advantages of this kind of test is it's required little space, low guessing factor. And then the disadvantages of this kind of test is restricted to measure students' ability to associate one set of fact with another. And then here's the guideline. We need to restrict matching sets of brief lists. And we need to make lists homogeneous in content and forms, and then ensure that all options are plausible, and then create more options than prompts. Since this is matching, so the examiner need to be creative to create more options rather than the prompts. And then the third kinds of this tests it is multiple choice. I think this is the more familiar one, yeah, for the test taker. The advantages of this kind of test, it is a smaller guessing factor, useful for testing a wide variety of learning points, such as yeah, TOEFL test or IELTS test, yeah, which need to measure complete skills, yeah, of English, yeah. And then the disadvantages of this kind of text, it is often overused and then sometimes used for inappropriate purpose. And here's the guideline. If you want to make a multiple choice question, so we have to make sure that alternative are grammatically consistent with stems, and then write alternative of about the same length, avoid overlapping options, avoid inadvertent clues, avoid options like none of the above, A and B, but not C, and then etc. And then avoid excess wordiness. And then the second types of test items, yeah, to get the response from the examinee here. This is constructed response item. For the overall, we can see here that yeah, it is usually used for testing productive language use. Yes, so it is very appropriate if the examiner want to assess the productive skills of the examinee, such as writing or speaking. Yeah. And the disadvantages of this kind of test, it is difficult and time consuming to score. And scoring is subjective, and then bluffing is possible. Yes, of course, because if we have probably more than one examinee, so it will take times uh, to check for the answers, yeah, because the answer may be vary one each other, yeah, and then it takes a very long time, yeah, and on the other hand, the scoring, it tends to be subjective, yeah, because yeah, as what I said before, each examinee may give different different answer, and then it tends to be subjective, yeah, because it depends on the examiner, yeah. If the examiners feels that um, this the answers of this examinee more appropriate for him or her as the examiner, so it is possible that the score will be higher than others. Yes, so it's meant to be subjective. Yeah, and then the overall guidelines here. If we want to make this such kinds of tests, so we have to make sure the definitions of the correct answer is clear before administering and scoring. Yeah, and then remember that the scoring is subjective, so try to keep scoring fair. Yeah, and here for the example, there is a fill in, yeah, and then short answer, and then performance. Fill in here, the advantages is easy to create, yeah, flexible to use, requires a short time to administer. And the disadvantages, limited to testing a single words or short phrase, may have many possible answers, yeah. And then the guidelines here, if we would like to make these kinds of tests, so we need to provide sufficient context and then keep blank line consistent and then avoid putting blank too close together. And then short answer, the advantage of this kind of text is easy to create. It's required a short time to administer, yeah, because the answer is short, yeah. And then the disadvantages of this kind of test is limited to testing a view, phrase, or sentences. May have many possible answers, and each student may produce a completely unique answer. So, if we provide this kind of test, so we have to be ready for getting the unique answer from the students, yeah, because maybe they perceive uh, different things, yeah, related to the questions, yeah. Each students each examinee may perceive different things, yeah, toward the questions of the task. So that the guidelines here, if we want to make this kind of task, so we need to make a word questions very specifically, yeah, and then give the students some idea of the shape of the desired answer, and then use the direct questions if possible. And then the third types of test items, yeah, to get the response is constructed response item, yeah. Constructed response item, it is yeah, it is can stimulate authentic language use and then can compensate for negative effect of traditional standardized testing, can provide positive washback effect. Okay, so that's the overall advantage if we give this kind of test, yeah. And the disadvantages of this test is difficult to create, takes considerable time to administer. Yes, of course, because we need to really pay attention to their performance, and it may result in increased cost, maybe, and then cause logistical problems, creates reliability and validity problems, and then increase the risk of test security breach. And here's the guidelines if we would like to make this kind of test. So we have to make sure that the student's task is clearly defined. So they have to really understand what they need to do, what they have to perform, yeah. And then we have to plan in advance how to score the examinee's performance, yeah. So we need to provide them with the clear scoring rubrics, yeah. And then where suitable, develop a scale for scoring performance and decide on whether to use a holistic or analytical scoring. And then score all of the answer to one task together in one session. And then score the test anonymously if at all possible. And then have at least 2 raters score each student's performance. And then 1 raters of the possibility of bluffing. And there is the personal response assessment, yeah, personal response assessment. The overall advantages of these kinds of tests, yeah, we can make this kind of tests in the forms of conferences, portfolios, and then self-assessment, yeah. For the overall advantages here, personal assessment, it is directly related to and integrated into curriculum and appropriate for assessing learning process. Yeah, so it tends to be yeah, appropriate if we want to assess their process in learning such a material. Yeah, in learning the materials. Yeah. We can understand the way they are learning in our subjects, yeah, from the beginning to the end, yeah, and then we can evaluate objectively according to what they have been through, yeah, in the subject. But the disadvantages of this kind of test is it is difficult to create and structure, and then also the scoring is subjective. And the overall guidelines, if you want to make this kind of test, so we have to make sure that students have a voice in everything that take place, yeah. And here is the part of this kind of text conferences, yeah, and then portfolios and self-assessment, yeah. Well, so I think yeah, there are many explanations here related to this. Right. And the next things that I would like to share here, it is related to general items writing rules, yeah, of the test construction. So here are the important rules that we need to consider in constructing the test, yeah. There are 2 important things. The first one is related to the linguistic linguistics roles, and then the second things is related to the format. Yeah. Linguistic confoundings here. The first one is item should be written at the examiner's level of proficiency. So here we need to avoid giving the test, which is the language, yeah, or the level of the language here. It is above their proficiency, above the proficiency of the examinee, because it will be difficult for them to adjust themselves in answering the questions. Yeah, so try to avoid in giving the kind of questions, yeah, in which the language is above their level of proficiency. And then the second one is item should not contain negatives or double negatives. Yeah, so here means that yeah, we need to avoid giving the questions that contains negative or double negative. Yeah, because it will make them confusing. Yeah, and it will difficult for them to process the questions and to find out the answers. Yeah. Okay, and then the third things is item should be unambiguous. Yeah. Yes, of course. The test must be clear, yeah, so that the examinee will understand, yeah, exactly what they are measured, yeah, what uh, what items that they need to achieve, yeah, in order to answer the questions. And then, okay, so that's from the linguistic confoundings. The second ones here, see from the format confounding. In the format here, the first rule is the item should contains only relevant informations. Yeah. Yes, of course. In order to make them not easy, but what is it? Uh, appropriate, yeah, giving appropriate answers of the test. So try to avoid the tests which contain complicated questions or complicated information. Yeah. So it must be clear, yeah, about the prompt, yeah, and then the instructions that they need to do here. And then the second one, item should be independent. Yeah, it means that if such as the multiple choice questions, yeah, avoid in giving the questions in which there is a correlation, the questions which have a correlation answer. For example, questions number 1 and then number 2, and then the answers of the questions number 2, it depends on the answers in the questions of number 1. Yeah, so yeah, it will be not good. Yeah, so we need to avoid giving dependent questions or items like that. Yeah. And then the third one here, items should be clearly organized and format. Yeah. Yes, of course. In order to make it appropriate, yeah, for the test taker or for the examinee to answer. So each of the questions or the items of the questions must be clearly organized and format. Yeah. All right. And the last things that I need to share here, it is related to the elements of item specification. So here are several important elements, yeah, related to the items of tests. Yeah. The first one is general descriptions. General descriptions here, it is such as the clear descriptions that must be known by the test taker or the examiner related to the knowledge or the skills that that are going to be measured here. Yeah, so there must be a general descriptions first. Yeah, related to the knowledge or the skills, the description of the knowledge or skills that are going to be measured. And then the second element here, this is the sample items. Sample items, it is such as the examples, yeah, related to the following questions or items that that given, yeah, to them. Yeah, that must be a clear example so that the examinee will understand uh, precisely what they need to do. Yeah, and then try to make it relevant with the example here. And then the third elements here, it is prompt attributes. Prompt attribute here, it is yeah, as what I said before, that the prompt here, it is a very important things in as the elements of item specification, where the examiner have to give the clear descriptions, yeah, related to the material that they have to do in that text, yeah, and then what they have to, what they are expected to reach, yeah, in the items. And then the fourth one here, it is response attributes here. It is related to a clear descriptions, yeah, of the types of yeah, whether it is options and then the standard, yeah, by which their productive language response will be judged. And then the last one, it is related to the specification supplement. Specification supplement here, such as the additional information given by the examiner to the examinee here, in order to help them to complete the test item here. It can be such as a list of vocabulary or a grammatical list of grammatical forms or anything else. Yes, such as the supplement or additional information that can help them to overcome the test. All right, so that's all that I can share related to the materials. Yeah, particularly talking about what is it? Criterion reference test item. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much also for Prof. Fuad Abdul Hamid for giving me this chance to record myself in delivering these kinds of presentations, and all of my friends. Yeah. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.